Hi everybody, welcome to Black Cat Forge. Hope everybody's having a great day. It's a little bit rainy here, so what I want to do is I want to use my time to make the second talking video to you about things that I tell my new students. And I want to follow up on our first video. And the first thing I want to talk about is how to correctly hold this, how to hold the hammer. Because you remember I had said earlier that if you hold the hammer incorrectly, you can start causing damages to your elbows, maybe even to your shoulder. So normally when people think of holding a hammer, they've got a really tight grip on that hammer and they're just going to town on the anvil. Now, why that is bad, and when we look at the anvil here in the next segment, when you hit that anvil, there's a thing called rebound. That energy is returned back to the hammer. That's a sign of a good anvil, is the rebound. When you have that death grip, that rebound is going to send shockwaves all the way up your arm, and that's what messes up your elbow. So what you need to do is when you hold the hammer, you need to hold it very loosely in your hand. Notice how it just kind of rocks in my hand. Because when you hit and that rebound comes back, the hammer is going to rock back a little bit. It's not going to impact all that energy up through your arm. The other thing about holding the hammer fairly loose, so you don't want it so loose that when you hit it, it's going to go across the forge. But if you have that hammer and you're holding it super, super hard and you hit sideways, or let me demonstrate here, pretend this is your anvil, and you hit sideways, you're going to hit, and you're going to put a really bad mark in your steel, and you're not going to move the metal the way you want it. But if you're holding that hammer loosely, it will self-adjust as you hit. That's a tip that I did not know for several years until I was working with another master blacksmith, and he showed me that, and I'm like, that makes so much sense. So just remember, when you work with the hammer, you want to have some play in your hands. It was even said back in the 1700s, 1800s, when a master blacksmith would have several apprentices working in his shop, and he was training these young men to be blacksmiths, that when he walked by, he expected if he could grab that hammer in mid-swing, he could pull it out of their hands with little to no effort. Well, if he could do that, he knew they were holding the hammer correctly. If he could not pull it out of their hands, they were not holding the hammer correctly. So that's my little bit about using the hammer. It's something that you can practice on. Another tip before we move on is that another blacksmith gave me is if you're working and you seem that your hammer is not always hitting where you want it to hit, it's hitting everywhere but that one piece of steel. They said to take a scrap board and put a couple of nails in there and practice just driving those nails down without bending the nails. That will help improve your hand-eye coordination and help you learn how to have good hammer control. So I hope those couple of tips really helped. So now we're going to move over to the anvil, and we're going to talk about the anvil and the parts of the anvil and why they're important and how we use them in blacksmithing. Okay, so let's look at a couple of the anvils that I have lying around the shop. This one is my NC Tools anvil. This is a farrier's anvil. I don't use it for farrier work, but when I was starting out in blacksmithing, this was the first anvil that I could afford. It's about 40 to 60 pounds. It's not a really heavy anvil, but it does have a fairly good rebound on it. And this is when we were talking about rebound. Watch my hammer. That is the anvil returning energy to the hammer. That's what helps shape your steel. So the parts of this anvil are very simple. Right here, this is your horn. This is what you use for shaping your steel. And you'll notice when you see my Peter Wright that this horn's a little bit fatter, so you can get a different type of bend on it. Over here, you have your Hardy hole and your Pritchell hole. What those two holes do is, first of all, the Hardy tool is where you can take a tool like this fuller and drop it in there and you can work on it. You can do your work. When you're done, you just remove it and you go on with your work. You can also do this tool here is called a hot cutoff tool. This is when you just want to cut a piece of steel off while it's hot. You don't break it all the way because you don't want your hammer hitting this sharp surface. You get it 99% of the way and then you just bend it here on the anvil and it breaks. One thing to remember with hot cutoff tools, when you're done doing the hot cutoff, take it off, put it away. You don't want to leave it there because if you were hammering with that and you misstruck, you can really mess up your hand really, really bad. So this is one anvil here. This is the NC Tools. And over here, this is my main anvil. This is the Peter Wright anvil. This is the classic anvil you're going to see in the Bugs Bunny cartoons and Roadrunner cartoons. This is a classic English style anvil. This one here has a really good rebound on it. This anvil dates back to the early 1800s. It was imported from England. I don't know the whole history of it, but I did find this one in upstate New York. So I figure it's been in that area and then it's come down here to Tennessee. Again, just like the NC Tools, you have your horn. This horn's a little skinnier, which means you can kind of get a tighter bend on it. This here again is the face. This part back here is called the heel. If you notice, working on the heel of the anvil is a lot louder. You don't really need that for your ears. You can take like a magnet, stick it there on the heel, and the sound is a lot more muted than it would be without that. And that's just a cheap Harbor Freight magnet that I stick on there when I want to do that. Right here, this is called the cutting plate, or some people call it the step of the anvil. I really don't use that for cutting. In a later video, when we're talking about chisel work and cutting, I'll show you how to cut on the anvil using a sacrificial piece of steel. The biggest thing you can use this for is if you wanted to take a piece of flat metal and put a gradual curve into it, you can actually put your steel in there and start hammering it with the peen of your cross peen hammer, and that will get the steel just a real nice curve to it. In a later video, we will get there and we will talk about that. One final thing about rebound, and this is something that's I've had happen to me and I've seen almost happen to other people. I'm going to move over here back to the NC Tools anvil so I can stand in front of the anvil and give you a demonstration of what I'm talking about. So one thing that's really important, and I have had this happen to me and I've seen this with other students, is when you're working on your steel, your hot steel is going to absorb a good amount of the rebound that comes through. And that's the whole idea of anvil rebound. But if you miss strike and you're coming down hard, this rebound will redirect that energy. And I have had the hammer come right back up past my face when I was a raw beginner. And it will scare you. So my words of wisdom to all my new students is when you work on the anvil, you do not want to have your face right over the hammer, because if you miss strike and that hammer rebounds, it's going to come and clobber you right between the eyes. And that is something you do not want to have happen to you. One final thing before we wrap up this video. On your anvils, when you have an anvil, I don't care if it's what brand of anvil it is. I don't care if you're even working with a piece of railroad track. Anvil height is important for you to be able to work very ergonomically. When you stand just fully relaxed with a fist, your knuckles should rest on the top of your anvil. So if you're shorter, if you're taller, your anvil stand will vary. There is no set height on an anvil stand. You just want to make sure that when you're standing up straight and tall with your arms hanging down by your side, that your knuckles can gently rest on the face of the surface of your anvil. That is the best working height for the blacksmith. So that was a quick little video. I just wanted to touch those last two topics before we did move into our actual forging videos. Again, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please leave them below in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer your questions. Also, please remember, this helps me, this helps everybody by clicking like and subscribe. I'm not doing this to get rich. I'm not doing this to make $1 million, because I know that will never happen. But what I want to do is I want to pass on what I have been taught and what I will learn to other blacksmiths. That's my goal. That's the whole reason I'm doing these videos for you. And that's why I've started with the Blacksmithing 101. This is me being able to take you through the entire course that I would take a brand new blacksmith through. And the nice thing is you're getting this for free. So it just helps me if you click like and subscribe. I promise you our very next video will be on how to do tapering. We're going to look at square steel and round steel and the differences between them as you taper them. So that is the next video. I've got a couple of projects in between now and when I have time to do the next video, but I promise you it probably won't be more than about a week and a half before I drop the next video. So thank you. Have a great day, and I'll catch you later.